It is the person which makes the place, not the place which makes the person. We see an incredible thing in this week and next week's parsha about the power that a person can have in a place. In this week's parsha, in the beginning, Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva. Yaakov leaves Beersheva, Vayelech Harana. Our rabbis ask, we know that he's leaving Beersheva. We know he was in Beersheva. We know that he's going to Haran. Why tell us that he leaves Beersheva? The destination is important. And Rashi famously quotes the Midrash which says, because when Yaakov left Beersheva, it was never the same. Yatsa ziva, yatsa hoda, yatsa hada. Its grandeur and splendor left. The impact that Jacob had on Beersheva left the place bereft of his presence. So not only did he have an impact when he left, we see exactly the same thing when he returned. We see in Parshat Vayishlach, at the airport, just returning from a trip to London on behalf of Mizrahi, so you might hear the announcements in the background, so thinking of traveling and place. But when Yaakov returns to the land of Canaan, the first place he goes to is Shechem, and it says there in Shechem, in the beginning of Parshat Vayishlach, Vayichan et pnei ha'ir. He brought chayin, he encamped in the city, but the rabbis say not only did he camp, he brought chayin, he transformed the city. The Midrash says that he introduced a new currency, economy, marketplaces. The city that Jacob came to was not the same that it was before. So we see in life, it is not about only the places we visit and where we find ourselves, but rather the impact that we make on a place. And I want to end and say that not only on a personal level, but also nationally. I've been reading a fascinating book called The Land of Promise by somebody called Walter Clay Loudermilk, a land expert who in 1944 came from the United States, and he analyzed the pioneers, the Zionists, of what they'd done with the land. And he said he has never seen a people transform the land the way the early pioneers did. And I want to read one paragraph. He says, for almost 1,000 years, this land had plunged into degrading poverty by wars, exploitation, and soil erosion. Nowhere has the interrelationship between the deterioration of a land and the degradation of its people been so clear as in Palestine. From the 12th to the 19th century, he says, he had never seen such infertility in a land, and somehow when the Jewish people returned, they brought their love of this natural homeland of theirs and transformed the land to something totally different in one of the ecological marvels of the modern era. May we all, as individuals and a collective, wherever we find ourselves, make a transformative difference to the place, that it is never the same for our presence and for us being there. Shabbat Shalom.